hunt hungry.
We talked about it in the last podcast. If you haven't seen that one, go check that one out. We said we were going to come back and talk thermals.
Yep.
And have you ever watched The Office?
I've never watched it. No, just clips on TikTok and stuff. I'm familiar with it though. What you got?
So there's a scene where one of the guys is explaining to Michael Scott, the boss, about a surplus, and he explains it to him. He says, "Now explain it to me like I'm a 7-year-old." So that's what I think about when it's like, explain thermals to me like I'm a 7-year-old. So
okay.
I think everybody's heard the term, but
yeah,
I think a lot of people I think I got a pretty good grasp on them, but at the same time, I got questions about stuff that I'm like, well, what about this? Or how would you handle that? So for those that maybe needed explained like a 7-year-old, how would you explain thermals?
So thermals, the first thing that I always tell people when we talk about thermals from a weather, like meteorology sense, or however you want to describe it, atmospheric content, thermals are like invisible wind. We all are very familiar with the wind speeds, variable, sometimes strong winds we deal here at the surface where we live. Some days it's 5 to 10 miles an hour. Some days it's almost non-existent. Some days it's 30 miles an hour or whatever. Well, we also have, it's like an atmospheric current that we deal with too. And it's very noticeable here where I'm from and where I hunt here in Western Arkansas. There's a lot of hills and valleys, thermal hubs. People like to call them creek bottoms, knobs, whatever. I mean, we have a lot of elevation change and the thermals react to that. So step number one is realizing that there is an invisible wind that flows all around us at all times. From a hunting standpoint, to try to make it as easy to understand as possible, hot air is less dense than cool air. Okay. Think of a hot air balloon. That flame shoots up in that hot air balloon and it continues to rise so long as that it's warmer than the air around it. When it comes to thermal, an air parcel, if it's cooler, it's more dense, it's going to fall. So if you're hunting in hill country, I'm going to say Arkansas over and over because that's where I'm from. That's what I know. If you're hunting in hill country, you can expect, for example, when the sun hits a slope, let's say it's the east slope, it's going to hit that first in the morning. The thermals on that eastern slope are going to rise faster than probably that of the western or northern slope because it's the sun hits it first. It warms up faster. And in the evening, that same slope, the air parcels, the thermals themselves will start to fall sooner than that of a western slope or a southern slope or whatever, might have you. They rise in the mornings typically, and they fall in the evenings. Now, you can nitpick this a little bit. There's some guys are like, well, man, I guess I'm just screwed if I want to go in and hunt, a slope. Get it, because technically if you get in there in the mornings before daylight, the thermals are still falling until that area starts to bake and warm up.
That's what I was going to talk about. I was going to say the exact same thing.
It's honestly, for a brand new deer hunter, I always just say, man, just get out there and hunt. Yeah. Get out there and hunt and enjoy yourself first and foremost. But if you really want to dig into the weeds a little bit more, I feel like the number one thing to pay attention to is your wind, because the wind can trump these thermals some. I think they can. Somebody might disagree with me there, but I think if you have a good crosswind or a wind in your face, sometimes those thermals aren't as bad as you think they are. But if the winds are very light and variable, I don't know, man, you might just want to stay out of those thermal hubs. Maybe try to find you a good elevation stance where your thermals might be a little bit more stable. I don't know. That's how I've always looked at it. Whenever I was young in my hunting career, I struggled a little bit with the thermal stuff and didn't really realize what I was doing until I started to dig into meteorology more as I got older. And now I feel like I have a little bit better grasp on it.
Yeah, I've heard people say, think of it like water, like it's going to flow down the mountain and stuff. I don't really know how that would affect the up part, but the flowing down the mountain as thermals are falling does make a little sense to me. When is that? When does that switch normally take place? Is it as soon as the sun hits the ground, or is it got to warm up for a little while and then you're gonna see that switch in the mornings or the evenings?
I don't know for a fact. I don't know if I can say with confidence that there's just an automatic switch, but I can assure you that once that ground starts to warm up, the thermals are going to start rising. So whether it takes 5 minutes, 10 minutes, etc., the thermals are going to continue to rise. And just like in the evening, I think when the sun switches off and the shade starts to really work in, that ground temperature is immediately going to start going down once it's in the shade for a prolonged period of time. Thus, the thermals in that area are going to continue to go down. So, yeah, and you just said, you said it's like water. It's a great example. in our head, you know, we would like to think, well, the thermals are going to rise perfectly up to me and no problem. No, here in Arkansas, we have tree cover, we've got rocks, boulders, creek bottoms. Like that air swirls, man. It, you know, eddies and goes all over the place. So there's really no definitive way to control it. I think the goal is just to put it in your favor as best as possible. You know?
Yeah.
So.